So the holy grail of fantasy board games has always been to capture, to replicate, to create that RPG experience, that Dungeons and Dragons experience. This idea that we can take the power, the flexibility, the creativity of a dungeon master and have that through a board game mechanic, whether it's chart-based, card-based, random-based. I mean, there's a lot of engines that do that, some successful, some not so successful. And also taking that RPG experience and condensing it to a playable game, a one-sit game that might last 2 or 3 hours, but really trying to capture a lot of the behind-the-scenes mechanics that make RPGs so amazing and so fun to play. And especially from a solo perspective. And certainly, I love Dungeons and Dragons. I'm playing in an awesome campaign right now. I'm rewriting a new campaign that I'm hoping to launch soon. But there is, even being a D&D enthusiast, there is this allure of, can I get that experience? Can I capture that feeling solo? Or with 2 or 3 players, can we capture that together? And some board games have done this very well. Some not so well. Some have tried to do it well. And this brings me back to Magic Realm. Magic Realm. And I'm saying playing Magic Realm. I'm working my way through Magic Realm right now, and I'm going to be posting up some videos and some vlogs. And I say working my way through because I believe, it's kind of like Mage Knight. You believe you're playing it correctly. There's a lot of nuances to the game. And I believe I'm playing it correctly, and I'm kind of making some decisions in the moment and using various references. But I'm amazed with the complexity, the scope, and what is captured in Magic Realm. It really is a very, very unique and interesting engine. It feels like I'm playing advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and certainly that was the time period, and that's what it's modeled after. But this leads into the question vlog here, a Magic Realm reprint, or why has there not been a clone of Magic Realm? Now, we go back and forth, and certainly I do this in my collection. There are some titles that, like the Dungeons and Dragons Adventure series, they do what they do. They have some shortcomings. There's a couple of annoying features, the way they spawn event cards, and sometimes it's like, why is this even happening? But it's a quick random dungeon generator. You roll some D20s, you level up fast, you get some loot. It's very simplistic, and I mean that in a good way. It works, like Hero Quest. Hero Quest works. I want to sit down and I want to play something light and fun and roll some dice. But on the opposite side, we all have dungeon crawlers that we've played or are in our collection that, well, is Mage Knight a dungeon crawler? Something like Mage Knight. Or I'm thinking Gloomhaven. Although once you hit your stride with Gloomhaven, it's fine. There is a learning curve. But let's just say there are more complex dungeon crawlers. And I've played some titles in collections by a friend of mine that are very complicated. Very complicated. So I know there's an audience out there for people that some people want simplicity. Some people want to get into the tables and the charts and the flow and the rules and the complexity of it. So my first thought is, well, Magic Realm was very unique at a time when it wasn't done, nothing like it was done. And from that perspective, board gamers, which were really kind of war gamers at the time, were used, they expected that complexity. That hex-based complexity. They expected it. So my first thought was, well, that wouldn't really translate now in the here and now of today because it's too complex. Well, I don't think that's true. There are a lot of games that are not as complex, but they're complex. And a lot of players out there enjoy that. I've played some Euros that I'm like, I can't wrap my head around this. Like, just give me the dice. I got to attack. Like, I got to do something from that perspective. So it's not a question of complexity. And certainly with play testing and rules, I mean, this is one of the things that have been fantastic about Magic Realm that I don't think I would have been able to survive, 10 or 15 years ago or 20 years ago, given the age of the title. The resources to learn how to play, YouTube videos, reading blogs, reading some rules rewrites, it's made it much easier. So certainly if there is a complex RPG dungeon crawler game, that complexity can be supported either by the community or by the distributor slash manufacturer slash creator with videos and documentation. So I don't think complexity, my first thought was complexity is not the problem or the challenge. And again, I'm talking the duality of Magic Realm being reprinted. Of course, you'd have to secure the rights, the title, and all that. But let's just say that can happen because it's happened with other stuff that's out there, Dark Tower and Fireball Island. We were just playing that the other day, so I won't say it's impossible. I mean, look, Hero Quest being reprinted. Like, what did any of us ever think? Not even Merlin himself would be able to see that with his sight. I mean, and here we are. So never say never. But then we tend to look at the components. Now, here's what's interesting. There was a time before I jumped into board games that, well, Wargamer Fritz. I mean, I started with Dungeons & Dragons, started playing war games, Battletech, Warhammer 40K, DBA, DBN, and I did jump into hex-based war games at the time. And by jump in, miniatures were the focus, but hex-based war games I would play either because we didn't have miniatures or it was a quick way to play. I mean, I spent with friends Web and Starship playing that like crazy. My copy is like completely faded. It was nice to be able to pull out a hex-based war game, set it up, roll some dice, play it. And with this perspective at the time, you had a nice looking hex map, but you had counters. There were no miniatures. They weren't even tokens. They were counters with markers and numbers and stats, and you kind of visualized it. Now, what I wonder, I think the biggest challenge to something like reprinting Magic Realm, like, let's just say that like the logistics were done and it's like, do whatever you want. I think the challenge would be in the presentation where, and I ask this, have we become so spoiled with miniatures and cards and the visuals, the analog visuals, which absolutely are important. I mean, I love miniature-based games. Reprinting something like Magic Realm with just the cardboard tokens, how would that work? How would that work? Would that be enough? Would someone look at it and say, well, okay, the rules are intriguing, but just those visuals, how does that look? So in exploring this, I was thinking, I don't think that is a challenge either. I think that can be addressed because Magic Realm is a simulation type game. You could update those components. I mean, the tiles still look fantastic. What if you updated the tiles? And again, this is like completely wish listing. I mean, the logistics of printing this might not be possible. If the tiles were upgraded to semi 3D tiles, kind of like the deluxe edition of Settlers back in the day. If you upgraded those tiles and put the focus on the tiles, that would be enough of a visual. If you had the counters, now there's a lot of counters in Magic Realm. I'll give it that. Could you upgrade those counters where they had artwork on them? And you still need the stats and the numbers and things like that. But giving a refresh, I think it could work. I don't think counter-based war game simulation type games are necessarily done. If you refreshed everything, if you refreshed it and updated it, I think it would work from that perspective. And I also have to feel like something like Magic Realm, the strength of the realm is on the playability of it. The playability of it. The fact that it doesn't need miniatures. It doesn't need all these fancy components. And look, I'm all for fancy components, but I realize that is the primary cost of the game. If there were no miniatures, if it was just counters and tokens, if it was updated but in the same format, the production costs would have to be less, or the production costs could be spread out among upgrading components compared to those other things and those other aspects. So I look and say, Magic Realm reprint, or something created, a Magic Realm clone. From that perspective, I still wonder, given the fantastic enjoyment of the realm, why hasn't that been done yet? So I'm going to turn it over to you guys, and then I'm going to get back to working on sharing some of my thoughts and experiences, doing my best. Maybe I'm like 80% there in the rules. Doing my best to play the realm.